You are Locked On Wolves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
The tale of two halves tonight as the T-Wolves come up short in their first game with no Anthony Edwards. Plenty on that later. 127-114, though, your final versus Denver. Wolves dropped to 2-2 on the year. What's happening back in the lab? Back at it. Another T-Wolves postcast right here. If you're new here, thanks for joining. One-stop shop for all your Timberwolves instant reaction deep dive after every single game. Get to know this guy, Jack Borman, Wolves expert, NBA expert. Give him a follow on X at JRBorman13. I'm Luke Inman at Luke_Spinman. And of course, you got to follow Ben Beacon too, host of the Locked On Timberwolves show each and every day. Find all the video right here on the Locked On Wolves YouTube channel, all the audio wherever you find your podcast. All right, lots to get into, Jack. Biggest turning point from tonight, tale of two halves. First small snapshot sample of what it could look like with no Anthony Edwards. Likely the next 8 games. Again, we'll touch on that. But first, just off the top, again, obviously that was the big news today. No Ant, probably going to miss 2 weeks, probably 8 games when it's all said and done. So it felt like kind of all eyes were kind of on the ripple effect, right? What's it going to all look like, I guess, tonight? Wolves were down 8 midway through the second quarter, going to halftime up 8 after a great run. Then third quarter starts. Jamal Murray just goes berserk, man. Ends the night with 43. And between him and Joker just kind of felt like too much. Throwing a little Hardaway in there too. Felt like too much. Nuggets run away with it at the end, 127-114. As we always do, start with the big picture. 5D view. 60-second knee-jerk reaction. Number one thing that kind of stuck out the most tonight in Game 4, again, with no Anthony Edwards for the first time.
Yeah, I think without Ant, but also without Jalen Clark, who missed this game with some calf tightness, was just really difficult to contain. Jamal Murray, I think, was the biggest thing for him. 43 points on 29 shots. We can get into him a little bit later. But, yeah, I think also, too, just scoring off of, those turnovers plus second chances or opportunities where, you're giving the opponent, some leeway to score there in the first half. Denver won in that area 16-13. Again, second scoring off turnovers plus second chances. But then in that third quarter, it was 17-0. Denver was really problematic for the Timberwolves there. And then the points off turnover differential, right? The Wolves only had one more turnover than Denver did. 15-14, but Denver was plus 18 in points off turnovers. It was 24-6. And so the Wolves not being able to capitalize enough on the stops they did get over the course of the game was really problematic. And then again, for the Wolves, 3-point shooting kind of doomed them. Didn't get up enough. Again, tonight, only 32 attempts, but again, the Wolves 7 of 18, 39% in the first half. And then in the second half, it sure felt like it. They were 3 of 14 and just so many opportunities for them to hit a few 3-point shots that could keep them in the game or turn the tide a little bit more when the Nuggets went streaking. Just didn't have the requisite shot making there. So, all that kind of combines to produce what was a really fun first half, but just a bummer of a second half.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect segue to our biggest turning point from tonight.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
So you kind of touched on it already. Again, Wolves had a great run midway through that second quarter, down 8 at about the 8 and change minute mark. They go into halftime up 8. Then the wheels fall off a bit. Jamal Murray goes crazy, kind of all downhill from there. But give me a specific kind of time frame, I guess, or a moment, whatever it may be. Biggest turning point tonight in this one. When was it and why?
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest turning point tonight was just a 7-0 run from the Nuggets from about the 8:22 mark of the fourth quarter to the 7:33 mark. It coincided when Nikola Jokic left the floor. And that came on the heels of the Wolves getting on a 7-2 run of their own to start the fourth quarter. They cut the lead to 3. The whole arena was rocking. And it just felt like the Nuggets just had this quick strike ability at different points of the game tonight that I think really prevented the Wolves from getting a bigger lead than it felt like they should have had. I mean, the Wolves' biggest lead tonight was 9, but there were a bunch of points at this game where we all kind of looked at each other on press row and said, it feels like the Wolves are up 15 or 20. How is this a 6-point game? And with how good Denver is in those moments, it just gets really tough. And then you got to tip your cap to Peyton Watson, right? Guy who is not much of a shooter for the Nuggets, is not a guy that's going to take many of them, but made both of his corner threes and really opportune moments for them to essentially help put this game away for Denver. And I think the air came out of Target Center rather rather quickly on that run, just because I think everyone in the building was pretty surprised the Wolves came out, got stops at the start of the fourth quarter. But again, I think that was just the biggest problem for Minnesota tonight. Outside of their inability to contain Jamal Murray, was just that they weren't able to capitalize well enough off of the stops that they did get, despite the push. I thought guards pushed pace pretty well in the first half off of stops. It was just, a lot of those kind of flowed into, semi-transition half-court opportunities where the Wolves were playing with some good flow, but just didn't see that enough in the second half.
This is the Locked On Player of the Game.
We usually would just go Wolves MVP, but tonight let's just switch it up, switch gears, and give me the game MVP. And I assume I know where you're going with Murray, but just talk about his impact, I guess, a little bit more tonight with no Anthony Edwards, no Jalen Clark.
Well, yeah, I think, normally people would think that the Wolves would miss Anthony Edwards' offense, but I think the Wolves really missed Anthony Edwards' defense in this game, right? Because, in the last couple of seasons, the Wolves have really, I think, well, not necessarily broken out, it's a fair word to use, but they've played really well against the Nuggets, and in large part because they've had Jaden McDaniels guard Michael Porter Jr., who obviously is with the Nets now, but, they had him guarding Jamal Murray instead of Ant. And then you also don't have Jalen Clark in this game. And Jalen Clark, boy, would have he been a good option to be able to throw out there on Jamal Murray, fighting over screens and just making it difficult for him with his physicality. And they didn't have him. And so not having either the first two options that you'd probably want on a guy like Jamal Murray, whose usage I think is just so diverse. The Nuggets do such a good job of mixing it up, whether they're running on-ball screens with Valanciunas in the non-Jokic minutes, the DHOs and two-man game with Jokic. They run him off staggers. He does a great job of cutting if guys are, falling asleep, and you can't do that when Nikola Jokic is on the floor. So I think for him, just put it all on display. He had 23 points in that third quarter, and his gravity. I mean, the Wolves were just so focused on what Jamal Murray was doing that it opened up opportunities for Tim Hardaway Jr., who was also tremendous in this game. He had 15 points in that third quarter alone. He and Murray combined for 38 of Denver's 45 in the quarter. And for Denver to score 45 points in a quarter is pretty impressive. But Nikola Jokic wasn't really involved in any of it. I mean, Nikola Jokic scored 2 of those 45, and he only assisted on 6 of those 45. So for him to have, account for just, what is it, less than a fifth of their points in that quarter going nuclear is pretty insane. And so I think you just got to give Jamal Murray and Tim Hardaway Jr. A lot of credit. I was pretty disappointed with what Dante DiVincenzo put forth defensively in that quarter against Tim Hardaway. Just lost him off the dribble a couple times, which is not really something that Hardaway Jr. does a good job of. But yeah, I just think it was the Wolves' inability to guard in one-on-one settings was just kind of a on full display in that third quarter, especially with Murray. And we've seen Jaden McDaniels struggle at times with guys that run off of screens quite a bit. And he's just a much better, straight up isolation defender with guys that are a little bit bigger and not quite as quick. So, just a game where you really missed Ant's defense and also missed Jalen Clark's defense, and was, just a bummer that, would have been a really cool opportunity for Jalen to play a lot of minutes tonight in a spot where they needed him. But, obviously his health is first and foremost, and hopefully he can be back out there on Wednesday against the Lakers.
Yeah, no doubt. Well said there. If I made you pick a T-Wolf player as MVP, trying to find a positive here, switch gears a little bit. Got to go J-Mac, right? 25 points, 4 blocks. He was fantastic tonight. Yeah,
no question. I think it was really cool to watch Jaden McDaniels kind of flourish on both ends of the floor, in this game. I think, obviously him having to guard Murray was not something that the Timberwolves wanted him to do. They didn't have him matched up on Murray every possession in this first half, but I thought he was really confident offensively. I mean, Jaden McDaniels is a guy who can really be a competitive advantage for the Timberwolves offensively. He's a guy at 7 feet tall, can handle it, is a really solid mid-range shooter. We know that he's capable of knocking down the three-point shot, and is just an excellent finisher inside. I think his length and touch, that combination is really special, and he put it on display just attacking, especially in some of the 3-guard lineups that we saw from Denver. He's going to have a guy on him who's more of a 6'4", 6'5" type of defender, and I thought he did a really good job in this game of just putting it on the deck and finding creative ways to finish inside. So that was great. And then I think for him too, defensively, he saw Rob Dillingham struggling with the Murray matchup, and saw that some of Bones Highland at times too was struggling with that matchup, and so was very clear in communicating with those guys like, hey, we can't force switches on those matchups. We have to try to stay connected, and so I'm going to try to take Jamal Murray instead of you guys. And so I think it's that willingness to communicate and and just try to help out some of his teammates. I thought was cool to see defensively. And then in the first half of this game especially was contesting nearly everything at the rim that he was involved in. It had 4 blocks in this game as well. So it was a bummer second half for the Wolves, but it was really nice to see Jaden McDaniels step up in the first game without Anthony Edwards.
Plenty more deep dive from this one, including more on what the point guard situation looked like tonight with no Ant. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to us by Monarch Money. You ever go check your bank account and go, where did my money go? Dining out, online shopping, entertainment, so easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Not just another budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, spending all in one place. So you stop just managing your money and instead you start building wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your entire first year. This episode also brought to us by Prize Picks. Without a doubt, the most fun I have playing daily fantasy because you can win up to 25 times your money this NBA season. And why I love it, it's so easy to play. All you got to do, you select 2 or more players, you pick more or less on any projected stats on any given night. Plus, they now offer Apple Pay quick and easy deposits into your account all season long. Right now, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use code LockedOnNBA. You're getting a first deposit match up to $100. That's promo code LockedOnNBA at prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. You're getting a 100% bonus match up to $100. This episode also brought to us by Built. Nobody likes paying rent, but if you gotta, you might as well get something for it. That's where Built comes in. Built's changing the game by turning your rent into rewards you can actually use. When you pay rent through Built, you're in flexible points, and those points can be redeemed towards hundreds of hotels, airlines, future rent payment, your next Lyft ride, you name it, they got it. Turn your rent into rewards. Start earning points around your neighborhood. Go to joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA. That's joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the link so they know we sent you. All right, just real quick before we get into what we'll be talking about, just some, I guess, quick hitters. I wanted to ask you about the point guard situation now and just what you felt it all looked like, I guess. Pros, cons, what we love, what we hated. Mike Conley, Rob Dillingham, getting some extra minutes, the whole rundown. Just run it down for me real quick.
Yeah, Chris Finch started Mike Conley in this game in replace of Anthony Edwards. And that was before we knew that Jalen Clark was going to be out. So he was a late scratch. But yeah, he just said that without Anthony out there, we're going to need the organization and the flow that Mike creates. And he also added that we can't continue to put too much more on Julius's plate, which is understandable, considering that he did a lot of initiating last night. But I thought Mike was really good. He set a good tone in this game. He accounted for 10 of the Wolves' first 14 points and just looked like he had a ton of energy, which was great to see from him on the second night of a back-to-back. I think anybody here would take 10 points, 4 assists, and 3 rebounds from Mike Conley. Again, only made one 3-pointer. You'd like to see him get up more than 3, but there were no qualms for me about how Mike Conley played, and so I thought it was good to see him. But both Rob Dillingham and Rob Dillingham and Bones Highland really struggled out there on both ends of the floor. I thought that while Dillingham looked, comfortable at times offensively, threw a really just lazy, careless, one-handed pass into the middle of the zone, and Nasri hit the nail. And Chris Finch was pretty unhappy about that and benched him, understandably there. And I thought Dillingham was really poor defensively. It just looked completely lost out there. Was unsure of whether to go over or under, whether to switch or not to switch, and just looked like he was kind of getting lost at sea a little bit and didn't play as much in the second half as a result of that. Had a bad turnover and a foul on Jokic. That was a transition take foul, but did make a nice little pull-up jumper and in pick and roll, which I think you'd like to see him do more of. But the unfortunate part was, he just didn't look sure of himself when he was going to take that shot. I think you'd like to see him just come off screens firing like he did the back half of the preseason. So, overall, I thought good to see Mike playing well, just because I think he's gonna be a guy that's going to play minutes, and you need him to play minutes. It just as a trusted guy who can handle the ball. And then for Bones, 4 points, 1 of 6 shooting. Only had 1 assist. I think, again, if Bones is going to be a guy who's going to be out there to score more, you just need him to score more than 4 points in 16 minutes. And I think he knows that. And I think you'd still like him to be a little bit more competitive on Jamal Murray on the defensive end of the floor. So, I don't think that Bones Highland really did himself many favors tonight, but neither did Rob Dillingham. So I think you're going to see a pretty similar split of minutes between, with Mike being the number 1 guy in that clubhouse, Bones being number 2, and then Rob being number 3. And I would presume that if Jalen Clark is back on Wednesday, that he would probably eat up the minutes that Rob Dillingham is getting. But it was good to see Rob back out there. He said that the mask wasn't bugging him in terms of seeing anything or shooting or anything like that. So good to see him back out there. But yeah, just again, not really able to get out there and earn more minutes, which is unfortunate because I feel like we're all rooting for him to be able to do that. So
yeah.
This is what you'll be talking about.
All right, what we'll be talking about tomorrow morning when we wake up. Obviously, the tale of two halves, that's going to be an A topic. Lack of defense without Ant more than even the offense. That'll be a hot talker. What's part 2, though? Like, how do they make sure this thing doesn't, unravel? How do they stop the bleeding before it even occurs, I guess, until they get their superstar back?
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how they manage the rotation. I think getting Jalen Clark out there obviously will help just as a perimeter defender. I think the perimeter defense has been the biggest problem for me. I think guys just haven't been able to guard and keep guys out of the paint, which is unfortunate. And I don't think that, outside of last night, that Rudy Gobert has been a good enough force on the interior. I think there have been too many moments where Rudy is, I think you can live with Rudy not rebounding quite as well if he's contesting a ton of shots. And I think you can live with Rudy not contesting a ton of shots if he's rebounding a lot. But there were too many moments where it wasn't really, he wasn't doing either of those things tonight. And I think the Wolves just need him to be more of a force at the rim. But in Rudy's defense, they also need guys to get in a stance and guard a little better. But they got to figure out, the non-Rudy minutes, I think is one of the biggest things, for the Wolves here coming up. I think, when you look at how they played, with Rudy on the court tonight, that a defensive rating of 120, which is not good at all. They had an offensive rating of less than 90, which is pretty atrocious. And I think they've, part of that was due to 3-point shooting, but the Wolves had a 136 offensive rating with Rudy off the floor, but they actually won those minutes by 5 because they were tremendous. 148 offensive rating and did a great job from 2. They shot 16 of 24 from 2 with Rudy off the floor just because they were relentlessly attacking Jokic. And I think the Wolves just have to do a better job of finding ways to manufacture, offense when Rudy is out there and defense when Rudy is not out there. So I'd be curious to see if, if they do decide to go with a 10-man rotation, if Jalen Clark's back on Wednesday, maybe we see some Yohan Berenger. Naz Reid continued to play really well again tonight. So for Naz to come back out tonight with 18.7 rebounds on the heels of a double-double last night, I think you'd like to continue to see him play more. And I think if you may see lineups where you have Julius, Naz, and either Rudy or Yohan out there. I think Naz obviously is comfortable playing with another guy who can handle at the kind of power forward, point forward position. He did so with Kyle Anderson, and he played with Kyle Anderson and Cat at the same time. So he's definitely comfortable playing in those situations. So I think it's just going to be interesting to see if Chris Finch, kind of how long he gives these guys time to try to figure out the perimeter defense aspect of it before he just leans into playing bigger and protecting the rim and rebounding a little bit better. So how they manage that is going to be interesting going forward here, because they've got to figure it out. And it's fortunate they play a Lakers team that is super injured. On Wednesday, won't have Luka, won't have LeBron, won't have Gabe Vincent. So
Austin Reeves, 68-point night coming.
I mean, who knows? But it's going to be interesting to see how they handle it, because the defense has to get better without Rudy on the floor. But the offense has to get better with Rudy on the floor. So it's kind of interesting to see which they address first.
Great stuff per usual. T-Wolves can't stop Jamal Murray. They dropped their first game without Anthony Edwards, 127-114. That's your final 2-2 now on the year. Much love to all you guys, all the everydayers that always make us your first listen. All you guys coming in the chat with us too from game to game. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. Just hit 10K subscribers. So thank you very much for that. Go follow Jack at JR Borman 13. We'll catch you Wednesday. Lakers in town. Another 8:30 p.m. tip. Until then, signing out.